Thank you and good morning. My name is Heidi Nestel. I'm an attorney with the Utah Crime Victims Legal Clinic. We are a nonprofit that was started 20 years ago to help victims have a voice in the criminal justice system. We help victims navigate complicated and oftentimes overwhelming criminal processes. And we make sure that their voices are heard as resoundingly intended by the voters of Utah and the Utah State Legislature, who passed a state constitutional amendment giving rights to victims as well as statutes over 30 years ago. We appreciate that you honor these rights today by hearing from Maureen's family. It has genuinely been one of the greatest honors to serve Maureen Hunsaker's family for the past 20 years. We have gone to dozens and dozens of court hearings together. I was able to meet Maureen's mother, Betty, who is a force to be reckoned with, and other family members who attended every single hearing and met every obligation of a demanding criminal justice system. Sadly and unfortunately, Betty and Maureen's stepfather, Rod, died before they received justice for Maureen's brutal murder. Maureen's son, Matt, who you will hear from today, and he is online and he's listened to every word, and I have kept in regular contact. We've even shared life events with each other on social media and updates unrelated to this case or Mr. Menzies. I've gotten to know Maureen Hunsaker. She was cherished, devoted, kind. She was a joyful mother, daughter, wife, sister, aunt, and friend. I wish I had met her. I wish I had heard her laugh, seen love in her eyes, and watched her dote on her 3 young children. I look forward to you getting to know Maureen through the memories and accounts of those who will speak to you today. I want to take a few minutes and talk about some really important words and set the stage for Maureen's family as they plead of you, 5 distinguished board members, to consider these words in this most important and solemn decision. Mercy, compassion, justice, humanity. These were all words uttered by defense counsel during this hearing and undoubtedly will be the cornerstone of their closing arguments to the board today. For nearly 4 decades, this Hunsaker family and Maureen's friends have lived not just with grief, but with the weight of relentless legal delay, a system that too often talks of mercy while deferring justice. Today, I speak to you about mercy, but not the kind that is asked for by Mr. Menzies and his attorneys. True mercy is not the avoidance of consequence. Mercy is the relief of unbearable suffering. Mercy is allowing a family, this family, of a murdered young mother, Maureen, to finally rest, to wake up on September 6th, knowing that her killer no longer has a legal voice louder than hers. This family has lived through days of trial, appeal after appeal after appeal, hearing after hearing, forced to relive the most horrifying details of what was done to Maureen. Every time Ralph Menzies files another motion or is granted a further review, he is given attention and space that Maureen never had. Her children, robbed of their mother's love and guidance, have waited patiently while the system allowed her killer to linger in legal limbo, well-fed, well-sheltered, and alive. That is not mercy. That is injustice with a polite face. The only compassionate, conclusive mercy available now is this: to finally carry out the sentence that the jury and judge lawfully and unanimously decided 37 years ago. To give her family the one thing they've never had: an end, closure, silence, peace. Ralph Menzies has lived a full life of due process. He has had more hearings, appeals, and evaluations than Maureen ever had birthdays. If mercy is to mean anything in this world, it must be extended to the people who still carry the scars of what was done, not just to the man who inflicted them. The defense asks you to consider compassion, justice, and humanity for Ralph Menzies. But where was the compassion when he tied this young mother to a tree, a young Maureen to a tree, strangled her and slit her throat, leaving her lifeless and alone in a canyon? Where was the justice when her children cried for her at night, night after night? Where was the humanity when he treated her as disposable? Compassion must be paired with accountability to have any real meaning. Justice without consequence feels like a betrayal. Humanity loses its meaning when a victim is forgotten. If these words are to carry any weight today, then let them be given not to the man who destroyed life, but to the lives he destroyed. Please, we beg you, let your compassion rest with Maureen's children who grew up without their mother, to her husband who raised these children without a partner. Let your sense of justice be for the promise of fairness to the innocent. And let your humanity recognize that Maureen Hunsaker was human too, before she was reduced to a footnote in Mr. Menzies' legal saga. There is no justice, no compassion, and no humanity in granting mercy to a man who extinguished all three from his victim. Before I turn the time over to Maureen's family, I want to ask you, distinguished board members, to figuratively go somewhere with me. Will you please go with me in your minds about 30 miles from here to Storm Mountain in Big Cottonwood Canyon? Instead of mid-August where it's warm and beautiful, come with me to a cool day in February. Let's stand with Maureen for a minute so she is not alone with her killer, Mr. Menzies. Storm Mountain is a place with rugged rocks, oak, and aspen trees. Most of the trees would have been bare, as would the area, since it was winter. The temperature in Salt Lake on that day, that 23rd day of February, was a medium 52 degrees, but we've all been to the mountains and we know that it's colder in the canyon by sometimes 10 or more degrees. What were those final hours and moments like for Maureen? What did Menzies say to her? What was Maureen thinking? Was she allowed to plead for mercy? I wish I could ask Dr. Bigler and Dr. Hyde and the other distinguished doctors what it does to a brain to have 12 straight hours of terror, worry, and unimaginable fear. We heard Dr. Bigler testify that the brain fires more than 1 trillion neural signals or functions every single second. What happens to the brain when every second for the last 12 hours of Maureen's life was dedicated to fear and doom? For reference, there are 43,200 seconds in a 12-hour period. That equates to 43.2 quadrillion seconds worth of neural transmissions, all in survival mode for the last 12 hours of Maureen's life. What kind of trauma did Maureen's brain suffer? Let's stand there with Maureen so she is not alone in those terrifying moments. We heard from Dr. Hyde when he was describing vascular dementia, what the brain experiences when there is a deprivation of blood, oxygen, and glucose to the brain. He described that a person could feel unwell, anxious, distressed, stressed, possibly become unconscious, and to suffer severe hypoxemia. I'm not a doctor, obviously, but it's easy to research hypoxemia, which occurs in cases of strangulation and is considered one of the first steps towards death, where the flow of oxygenated blood is cut off and the brain begins to suffocate at the cellular level, leading to hypoxia, described as low oxygen in the tissues, resulting in brain damage and ultimately death. As uncomfortable as it is, let's stand with Maureen so she is not alone at Storm Mountain in her last few minutes. We know, Maureen's family knows, from crime scene evidence and the condition of Maureen's body, that she was bound to a tree by the hands of the man who sat just a few feet away from us. She wasn't able to escape. She wasn't given the chance to fight for her life. She was given no mercy. We know that from Maureen's body, that she was strangled by her killer. That man, Ralph Leroy Menzies, and that he slit her throat. By this man's hands, this man sitting right in front of you, Maureen's brain was deprived of blood, oxygen, and glucose for enough time for her brain tissue to die, for her to die. What we learned, at least what I learned from the doctors who have testified here and have testified previously, most recently in front of 3rd District Court Judge Matt Bates, is that the human brain isn't just an organ. It is the command center of everything we are as humans. Every second, firing more than 1 trillion neurons, neural signals, processing thought, emotions, pain, and memories. While we are alive, those signals never stop. They are the reason we breathe, cry, fight, and hope. When someone is strangled, when Maureen was strangled by Mr. Menzies, that incredible system shuts down violently and irreversibly. Maureen's brain was starved of oxygen and glucose, the two things it needed to survive. These aren't abstract medical terms. This means that as her oxygen was cut off, so was the fuel her brain needed to think, fight, and hope. Her body likely convulsed, her brain in its last moments, struggling desperately to stay alive. Firing signals in pure panic while shutting down, one cell at a time. She undoubtedly felt fear. She felt pain. I'm sure the doctors would agree that at least for a while, Maureen unmistakably knew what was happening to her. This was not a quick and painless death. It was not peaceful. It was slow, brutal, and intimate. This person who did this had to hold a ligature around her neck, probably for minutes, knowing she was alive, knowing she was struggling, knowing he was extinguishing every thought, every memory, and every dream she'd ever had. So when we talk about justice, mercy, or compassion, I ask you to remember what her brain was doing in those final moments. Every neural transmission, every silent scream, her body was begging for that she never got relief. That is the truth of her death. That is knowledge and suffering that Maureen's family and friends carry every day for almost 40 years. And that is why we, those who care for Maureen, are here today, because her voice was cut off. And now her family speaks for her. On behalf of the family of Maureen Hunsaker, I plead with this board to not grant clemency. Let this long delayed sentence be fulfilled, not out of vengeance, but out of mercy for those who have suffered quietly for 40 years. You are undoubtedly, and I appreciate Board Chair recognizing that this is emotional, and you will undoubtedly feel a lot of emotion today. I want to stress, I've worked with this family for a long time. There is no disrespect or offense meant to this board. What you will hear and probably feel today is desperation, hope, and belief that justice can be served. I want to apologize. Because this was scheduled at a late date, I do have to leave this room, but I will be logging on and listening to every word as the family members go forward. Thank you for your time.